So things have changed a bit around here, and I don't mean on the allotment, I mean doing this. We've gone wireless, which means I can do this. But it also means that I can move further back, and hopefully you can still hear me. But we're gonna have to put that to the test because I haven't really tested this out yet. And I'm just really excited because it means I can do so much more with you and not get in a fuddle with loads of cables. So I'm just gonna step back a bit, and I mean, I'm turning around, but hopefully you can still hear me from here. I'm at the strawberry cages, up to the dahlias, to the pond, and what if I go all the way up to the gate? I mean, I can only just see you, but you can still hear me. So I can run, I can skip, I can harvest and get on with loads of different jobs, and you are still right there, and this is so much easier. Oh my gosh. So yeah, we're wireless. And it's all thanks to you that I'm able to do this. So thank you so much for watching my videos, because you know, the money that I get from YouTube I can put back into the allotment and back into the channel and upgrade my gear, which makes life so much easier for me when I'm recording, when I'm editing, and it wouldn't be possible without you. So thank you guys, because this is an absolute breeze and I'm loving it. So in this video I'm actually going to test it out because I want to harvest both of my patches of squash. I've got some here and some here, and I'll teach you a bit about how to harvest your squash, tips on storing them, how to know when they're ready, and also a few do's and don'ts to look out for as well. So I'm going to get my secateurs and we're going to get harvesting.
You'll know that your squash and pumpkins are ready for harvesting when the vines start to die back like this, and they'll start to just look pretty dead, but it's time to now pick your squash.
Now maybe the squash hasn't fully ripened, or perhaps the foliage still hasn't fully died back, but you've got a frost that's forecast that week, then you definitely want to harvest them before any frosts. And also it's worth bearing in mind that certain critters might start to get a little bit hungry, such as rodents or even birds. I've heard that birds peck at squash and pumpkins as well, and so you want to harvest them before they start to have a bit of a field day in your pumpkin patch. And also, you know, it's Halloween soon, so you might want to get them out for a nice display. But once the foliage has died back, they're generally ready for eating. And this one here is my nice little buttercup squash. I can see on the top it's actually got a little bit of damage to the skin. Whether something's I don't know, pecked at that, I'm not sure, but that's definitely going to be one that I use first because it won't store. When it comes to harvesting your squash, you might think it's a relatively straight, simple process, which it absolutely is, but you want a nice, sharp, clean pair of secateurs, and where you make the cut is the most important thing. You do not want to cut into this stalk that runs from your squash to the vine. You don't want to cut that at all. You want to actually cut it on the vine that it's growing on, so perhaps here, and I like to leave a good 2 or 3 inches across the vine, and it means that it is more likely to store really well. And this area here where the squash meets the vine is actually the most susceptible to fungal problems, and it will rot away first, particularly if you knock the stem or if there's any sort of damage up to the top, because then air will get into the squash. Remember, it's got a hollow centre, and you might get some mouldy problems from the inside before you even notice on the outside. So yeah, this top section here, you want to leave as much up there as you can. And also remember, if you're growing them vertically like this, you want to support them as you cut them, because the last thing you want is for your squash to fall on the ground and lose its stalk. And I mean, they look really quite decorative when they've got their leaves on and quite spooky, but if you want, you can just chop them away. But as I say, leave a nice stalk. And also, whilst you're here, another don't is to hold it like that. Don't do that. As big as the stalk may be, and it might be a nice really big handle, you might have a nice big pumpkin or squash, just don't carry it by the stalk, because it's very common that that stalk can then pull off and you'll have a pumpkin or a squash without a stalk on it, and that means it's not going to store throughout winter, probably not even for very long. Within a few days is when I try and eat it if you lose that stalk. So yes, always carry it from underneath, and you'll get much better storage life because of it. Alright, well, I'm going to go around now and see what other squash we can find. So yes, I'll see you in a minute. So that's 2. I found another little butternut down here. Again, leaving plenty of stem. Yeah, nice little one. I do love butternut squash. It's such a nice sweet variety. And I'm gonna cut this away. Oh, there's another little baby down here. Ooh. Now this one has a little bit of rot on that stalk. Oh, that's another thing to remember actually. If you have a really wet sort of autumn, you want to try and harvest them before it gets particularly wet. We've had a soggy few days and this is looking a little bit mouldy, but it's mainly on the vine and not the stalk. But even so, this will be the first little butternut that I eat for sure. How many do you think we're going to harvest today? Oh, there's one all the way over here. It's a nice size. Oh, this is my Queensland Blue, which is perhaps the biggest squash that I have this year. Look at that. What a beauty. I've got so much nasturtium down here. I can't really see what's underneath it, except lots and lots of seeds. Oh my gosh. Oh, another little one down here. Oh no. Yeah, I've left it a bit long and the rain has rotted some of the stems. Well, that's all the squash from this one patch, and I've got even more just over there, so we're gonna see what else we can find. In this patch here, we've got 2 of my favorites. One which is called Honey Boat, and it's a really quite sweet, delicata type of squash, and it tastes almost as sweet as a sweet potato. They don't often really bulk out quite wide. They're usually quite small for me. Nice little boat shape. Really nice if you roast them and then put other sort of toppings on top of that as a whole sort of boat shape. Yeah, and I've got quite a lot of these looking around, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get these home. Having said that, this is actually quite a wide one. Funny little shape. Starting to get that pink sort of blush to it, which means it's ready. And also, you'll know when it's fully ripe when, if you stick your nail in the stalk, it should be really hard and your nail should not be able to go through it. It's always fun to grow a really large pumpkin and see what the biggest squash or pumpkin is you can grow. And I suppose especially if you've got kids, but you know what, for me, I just love small squash. You know, they're so much easier to portion for your meals and you don't have to deal with a huge amount of squash once you've cut open it. So yeah, I actually, although they don't look all that impressive, I actually much prefer smaller squash. And also they fit on your mantelpiece better for your autumn displays. Well, I think I've just got one last one here, which is another buttercup. Yeah, I think that's the final haul. So let's have a count up and see what we've got. So there we have it. This is my final squash harvest for this year, minus the 2 that I've already got or eaten. I've got a Turk's turban at home and I've already eaten one of the little red Uchi curry ones. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 butternuts, 9 of the honey boat, my 1 big Queensland Blue, a couple of buttercups and 2 Turk's turbans. And so yeah, my final harvest is about 21 squash, which isn't bad. I've definitely had better years, but these are the varieties I really like. Really tasty, and I'm pretty pleased. So what's next? Well, the next thing you need to do is to cure your squash, which means ripening them so that they get a nice tough skin and they'll harden off and store better throughout the winter months. So this is particularly if you've got some varieties that aren't fully ripe yet, like this butternut. It's still quite pale in colour, only just turned from that green to this pale yellow. So I'll keep this in a sunny window ledge at home for a couple of weeks, by which time it should then be fully cured and should store right until sort of February, March next year, if I don't eat them before that. And then once your squash are fully ripe and they are cured, they're ready to go into storage, and that can vary depending on what sort of place you have. Ideally, you just want it to be frost-free, not too hot and not too cold, just cool, airy, and I tend to keep them at home in my flat very well. I forgot to mention, wherever you store it, make sure it's away from any pests, because if the mice and the rats and the squirrels get hungry, they will find your squash. So if you're thinking about leaving it in a shed or a polytunnel, just be aware of that. And also dampness, they need to be really dry. So if it's in a polytunnel, they quite often get a bit fusty and a bit damp over the winter time, and you'll find that your squash are much more likely to rot in those kind of conditions. So I definitely prefer to bring them home if you can, somewhere dry and you know, with a fairly consistent temperature. But the one thing you want to make sure you do is check on them every couple of weeks. And as you go into sort of Christmas and the New Year, you want to be checking them every week for sure for signs of rot, because sometimes they can turn very, very quickly, and you know, you still want to be able to save them before it's too late. So I'm going to take these home now, but I know for sure there's a couple that I need to eat right away, such as this one that lost its stalk, and I can already see that this could be on the turn in the next couple of days, so I need to eat this one right away. And there's a couple where the stem has actually gone a little bit too wet from the wet weather that we had. That is just mud, but it's a really gnarly one, so I need to eat that one quite soon as well. So just remember never to carry them by the stalks, always carry them from the base, and keep an eye on them. And fingers crossed, you should be able to eat your squash and your pumpkins throughout the winter months. And some people ask me, well, how do you eat your squash? And if you've got a variety that tastes great, you can do absolutely anything to it. But personally, I love to roast them. You can turn them into a soup or into a pasta sauce. A recipe I particularly like is to use a butternut squash, roast it and mix it with a cheese sauce. So you have a cheesy sort of squashy pasta, and that is one of my favourite recipes. But yeah, so that's my tips and tricks on how to harvest your squash. I hope you have a good year. Let me know what your harvest is like, and tell me if you've got a favourite variety, because one of mine is the Uchi Curry, the Butternut Buttercup and the Honey Boat. I've not tried the Queensland Blue before. I'll probably save that one till last, because I think that's going to store really, really well into the colder months. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Oh yeah, and thanks again one last time for watching these videos and for upgrading my microphone, because I've really enjoyed this. It's given me so much more freedom to move around, and I'm really excited for what we can do in the future. See ya!